Hi there, and welcome to Our Weekly Craft, a source for ideas, inspiration, and fun for crafters. I'm Sarah White, Chief Maker at OurDailyCraft.com, and it has finally happened. It is like week 35 or whatever of this vlog, and I have no idea what to talk about. So we'll see how this goes. Monday is my birthday, which, is one of those good, bad sort of things. Like, I have never been big on birthdays, and I would tell you that I'm the age that I don't really know exactly how old I am, because it's like I'm between big numbers, and so I don't really know how old I am, because it's just not a big deal to me. But there's a little bit of that, facing mortality, and also like I tend to use my birthday as like another New Year's. It's not quite the middle of the year. We're a little past the middle of the year, but I kind of use it as a like reset to look back on my goals for the year and what I've done and what I haven't done. Maybe that's what we should talk about. It's looking back on the year so far. And, we've still got September, October, November, December. We've got 4 months left. We've got, third quarter, basically. Fourth quarter. It's the end of the third quarter. I know what I mean. That word helps, right? But there's still time in the year to like make some things happen. It's not like it's December 1st and we're going, oh my gosh, what did I do with this year? So I feel like having my birthday like toward the beginning of the end of the year gives me a moment to like reflect on, okay, well, what did I really want to do this year, and what have I done, and what have I not done, and what can I still do? My word for the year was release, in two senses. So like release as in releasing content, releasing, doing these videos was a release thing, because it's like I'm putting this out into the world. And the second release is like not having expectations about what was going to happen with it. So it's just like I'm releasing this into the world, and I'm releasing my expectations, my feelings of ownership, my ego of like people need to watch this, and I should have X number of subscribers or whatever, release. But it was also supposed to be like releasing ebooks, or release in the sense of like book proposals, which is not really a release, but like maybe it's a release in the other way, releasing the idea out into the world in the sense of like making the book proposal and sending it out finally, because I have these books. I did get a new book idea when I was on vacation, but other than that, like the books that at the beginning of the year that I was thinking about doing proposals for have been in my mind for years and years and years, and have not made it past like 4 different sets of notes on paper, digital notes, all the things in my journals, whatever. There's lots of places that I've written about them and thought about them and all this stuff, but I've never actually sat down and done the proposal for them yet. And so that was the thing I was supposed to do this year that I haven't yet. Though I've worked a little bit on the new idea, and I did write a book, a drawing book that is coming out in September. That was not on my radar, because I don't draw that well, but there was a publisher that had the drawings, the step-by-steps were done, and that person's like, I'm not a writer. So I have a lot of experience writing tutorials and things, and I can look at pictures and see what the difference is and be like, this is what the step-by-step for drawing the thing is. It's Chibi Mythical Creatures. It's a very cute book. It's coming out next month. So there's a release that I didn't anticipate, which is great. I started writing for a semi-local publication, the Arkansas Times, which is really, releasing articles. But so there's always that like sense of wanting to be open to new things, and like applying for different projects and trying out new things. I'm a full-time freelancer. I have like a lot of jobs, and then, it's like looking into different things that I could be doing to change up the mix of how I get paid and what I'm working on and all of those things. So yeah, I mean, even if it's not your birthday, Now, the end of the month approaches is a good time to think about that sort of stuff. Like, what did you, if you set goals or the idea of things that you would like to do, or you have a word for your year, how's that been going for you? Or is it working the way you expected it to? Like, I usually have a word, but then I don't like consciously try to bring it into my daily life in a way that maybe would make it more effective. But, there are these periodically I'll go, so how's that release thing going for you? And be like, well, it's kind of not, right? So what could I do, that would bring that back into my consciousness, into, my day-to-day work? What could I be doing differently? What could I do more of? What could I do less of? And all those things are great evaluations for the end of the month or anytime. Your birthday, the new year, the new month, the new week, depending on how deep into it you want to go. You can use your word or your annual or monthly goals as a check-in, and just be like, how well am I doing on that? Is that even a thing that I want to do anymore? And what steps can I take now to help to make that thing happen that I said that I wanted to have happen? And so for me, it's like, I need to sit down and write the damn book proposals, right? So I got really excited about this book idea while I was on vacation. I was reading, what is it called? The Felicia Day book. Something about weird. Know you're weird, or Embrace Your Weird. I think it's called Embrace Your Weird. I'll put it in the show notes when I can remember what it's called. And which is sort of a standard creativity book with a slightly geeky bent, but that and being on vacation got me thinking about, because I've long thought, the whole idea of encouraging people's creativity is a big part of like everything that I do or that I say that I want to do. And so this book idea that I had is, I've had lots, I guess at this point, over the years, I've had various different ideas of how that could be expressed in a book. And so I had this new idea for a different way to come to it that might be better for people who don't already identify as creative, right? So my belief is that every person is creative and that every person needs a creative outlet of some kind in their life. Like for me, it's knitting and sewing and cross stitch and painting, and parenting is creative, parenting teenagers. I mean, my daughter's not 13 until it's a little more than a week, but parenting that age is any age, but full of creativity, right? Cooking is creative. My husband does role playing, and that's creative. My daughter's an artist. I feel like everybody needs that something. Just maybe cooking dinner for your family is not your creative outlet, but maybe baking a cake on Sunday, or or doing the Sunday sauce if you have that in your heritage, or something a little fancier than the normal, a little more effort, a little more time, a little more intention goes into it. But a lot of people don't feel like they have that in their lives, and maybe they actually don't have that in their life, or they just don't define creative in the same way that I do. That they don't see parenting as creative. They don't see how they're creative in their job, or but in this particular book would be more about things that are fun, in addition to, like, you can be creative on your job and it's not necessarily fun, but bringing in that as a component of creativity is that it should be fun, and something that is deeply personal. Like, it doesn't have to be what somebody else's thing is. And so that's where Embrace Your Weird kind of comes into that. It's like, you have to find out what's fun for you and make time to do that. So anyway, that's a long way around too. I got really excited about that idea, and I wrote my journal like a bunch while we were on vacation and after. I feel like I've probably got a couple chapters written already, and like exercises and sort of a vague outline and all that stuff. And so that was really supposed to be my summer project, was that I was going to type up all my notes, and I was going to figure out an outline, and I was going to send a proposal, technically the people who did the drawing book have right of first refusal on my next book. So it's also a book that I think that they might actually be interested in, and not just like, if I were going to do a knitting book, they don't do knitting books. So that would be an easy thing to be like, hey, you want to do a knitting book? That's my next book, right? And then they'd be like, no, and then I'd be free to find another publisher. But, and whether they were to accept that book or not, it's still something I want to do, but I think it's something that publisher would also be interested in. So anyway, long story to the fact that I have not actually done that. I have typed up a few hundred words of it, and I've written some more in my journal based on when I was working on it and thinking about different things. And every now and then something will come up in my life and I'll be like, oh, that'd be a great idea for the book. And I'll write about it in my journal or whatever. And then, somehow I'm going to have to gather all this stuff back together and make it a book. But the thing the other day, it's a little fun, was about making a playlist of all your, like, I could listen to this song on repeat forever songs, or songs that you forgot you like. So like songs maybe from your childhood or your teenage years, or even not, but just songs that you're like, oh, I haven't heard that song in ages. I used to love that song, So making a playlist of that and listening to it, you can listen to it in your car, you could listen to it at work, you could listen to it while you're doing some other kind of creative activity, and like see what it does for you to listen to these songs that you really love as part of your routine, or just occasionally, or however you want to play with that. Just as an example, another little freebie tidbit for you. Fun creative exercise, which I actually started this week. It's really funny to see like the weird combo of stuff you get when you're like, oh, that's a song I really love, and that's a song I really love. And it's like a very weird selection. If you could see into my mind through my playlist, yeah, I don't know what you'd find, but it'd be interesting. So anyway, that book has kind of moved to the forefront for me, and it's a good, like, want to get it done for the end of the year kind of a book, because there are exercises to it, but it's not like a knitting book where you have to make all the things, right? So I could, theoretically do the proposal, submit it, go through contract, and be writing that book by the end of the year. I mean, I could do that with anything that I could be writing the book, but I feel like I had more progress into something that's just small projects and not like knitting or sewing or whatever. So I think for me, that's the big like release for the last quarter of the year, is like really making the time. And I've had time, like my main job has been really slow this summer, and I filled the time with other stuff, but that's, my own imposter syndrome and performance anxiety and all of that stuff, that all of the books that I have done previously have been the publisher coming to me and asking, except for the drawing book, because I saw the publisher was looking for someone, and I did it. It was like almost a job application. It was just like, here, here's my experience. I'd love to do this for you. And they picked me from their pool of applicants. But all my knitting books were, and two were with the same publisher. So it's kind of, we negotiated on the second book what it was going to be. But with my first book, was the publisher saying, we want a book about this. Can you write it for us? The second one was a different publisher who said, we're trying to get more knitting books. What could you write for us? And I said, oh, I've got this idea. I want to do baby projects, but they're not on baby yarn. So it's not the thin yarn that you usually use for baby stuff. It's bigger. And so, that one was basically my idea. It was a book that I'd had in mind for a while that they accepted. And then for the second book that we did together was more of a negotiation of like, here are the ideas I have, here are the ideas they have, here's what we think is popular and going to be popular in a couple of years when this book comes out. And that's how we got to color work. And I sort of decided that once we had the theme, I picked the format and what kind of patterns would be in it and all of that. So it was collaborative, but still I knew, like I was wanted for all of these projects. And so it feels different to me when I'm trying to like write a proposal out of nowhere. And so that's why it's good that I have this publisher that I've worked with on the drawing book, and that they, are as like a starting point. So even if they don't take it, like at least then I have a proposal written, right? And then I can send that to other publishers and see what happens with it. So that is the big goal for the end of the year. That will be my release. I'd love to do an ebook too, but that's the problem with me, is that I have like so many ideas, and then I'll be like, oh, I want to do this and this and this and this and this, and then I don't get any of them actually done because I'm like really interested in this one for a few weeks, and then I'm really interested in that one for a few weeks, and that's why I have like the pages and pages every year of notes of book ideas that are basically the same idea rehashed, because I never actually do the thing. So there are no other goals, right? There are little goals, but that's the big focus that I need to, like when I have extra time, when I'm not sure what I want to do, when I'm like bored with all the other stuff I'm doing. And it needs to not just be that, because that's sort of what I did this summer, where I was just like, oh, I'm going to have all this extra time, I'll work on the book. And that very rarely happened that I actually did that. So I need to, be serious about it like it's a job. And that's, with you too, maybe your goal setting is that you have a project you want to finish. And you honestly do need to like schedule it into your time. It needs to be on your to-do list. If you're a person who blocks out your calendar, give yourself 20, 30 minutes, an hour a day, whatever you can, reasonably with your other commitments. Give yourself, I am a big fan of like small deadlines. So though I am the worst at committing to deadlines that I set for myself. So I need one of those. I'm sure they still exist, but I remember you used to hear about like apps and websites where you could like make a weight loss goal or something, and if you didn't meet your goal, it would donate $500 to some completely abhorrent to you charity or political party or whatever. So that was supposed to really motivate you, because you'd lose this money and it would go to someone you hate. So that's like really supposed to fire you up to do whatever thing is. I feel like I almost need that, because I don't know if I'm not motivated by money either, so I don't know if that would help either. But I need to figure out how to like break it down into small, and if that's like a chapter a day, or right now if it's just like typing up 2 pages of notes a day, or whatever, or 20 minutes or whatever it is, such that I could have a proposal done by the end of September and sent. The end of summer, Labor Day part is not a great time for publishers. A lot of people take vacations there at the end of the summer, traditionally anyway. I don't know if that's still true, but I remember when I first got into the business that people would say, don't send book queries in August because nobody's in the office. If I could have that done by the end of September, and then it's done and it's sent, and if that particular publisher is not into it, then I've got a book proposal that's ready to send to other publishers. And so then it becomes, if it's rejected, as soon as it's rejected, send it to the next place on your list. So, you develop a list. And that's just the way you have to do it with proposals, because it's a numbers game. You send it and you keep sending it until, you can edit it and change things and whatever to make it fit for that particular publisher, because they have different requirements as to what they want to see in a proposal. But basically, as soon as it comes back, send it out again. You don't wallow in the rejection. You have to just keep moving forward, and somebody's, if you do that enough times, somebody will say yes. And that part, it sounds terrible and demoralizing and all of that, but it's like an essential part of the process that I haven't ever had to go through. I'm extremely privileged to have to have published almost 4 books now and never had to go through that process of rejection. But I think it'll be good for me if that initial publisher doesn't take it on, to have that experience of querying and sending out the proposal and refining it. And it gets you to really think. I did proposals for a couple of my books anyway, but it gets you thinking in a different way about not just what the thing is in my head, but how it will be a real book thing, like who is it for? How is it going to be organized? What are you going to include? What does it look like in your head? What do you imagine the page layout is going to look like? Is it going to have drawings or pictures or just be words or all of that? So, writing a proposal is valuable for clarifying your own thinking about the project, in addition to being able to share it with others in a coherent way. So, yeah, I think I just talked myself into it. No, it definitely had been on my mind, and so that's what came out today. But if you are feeling like you maybe haven't accomplished as much this year as you thought you would at the beginning of the year, and I mean, these past few years have been so weird, and I give everyone the biggest amount of grace about not doing the things that you thought you were going to be able to do, because things are really hard right now. And I think that's where I was starting with that whole, there's just a lot right now. And I didn't even get into all of the a lot right now, but there's, in my life and everybody's life, I feel like there's just, it's still heavy. There's more things piling on all the time. And so, you need to be willing to, if you're doing that sort of self-evaluation about where am I, where did I think I was going to be, where do I want to be at the end of the year, it's valid to say, I don't want those things that I thought I wanted. That project doesn't interest me anymore. That feels like that's going to be too much for me right now, which doesn't mean you'll never do it, but it just means you understand what you're capable of in this moment, and it's not that, and that's okay, right? So yeah, that's something that I encourage you into the month, beginning of the next quarter, to take some time to think about, okay, whether it's that you had a word or that you had a goal or that there were certain things you wanted to try to do. How are you doing on those things? Are there things you still want to do? What can you do in the next 4 months to make those things a reality, or to get closer to what those things are? And I would love to hear about it if you do this. If you already do this, you're a way better person than I am. But, I would love to know what your goals are for the rest of the year and how you're going to make that happen. So, a quick lightning round on reading, watching, and grabbing my knitting. I didn't show you, but I'm just working on this panel of garter stitch. And it's going to be part of a blanket because I needed something like mindless and comforting, and it's kind of cozy. It's long enough now that I can sort of have it in my lap and be warmish. I'm afraid that this piece is coming out bigger than the one that I knit a couple years ago that are supposed to go together, but it's a blanket. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? So I've actually been doing a lot of reading. I can't remember how much I talked about what I was reading last week, but I finished, what did I finish? I can't remember. Tomorrow, which I really loved. It was like, I don't give 5-star reviews too much. This is my third 5-star this year, which feels like a lot actually, because I feel like there's usually only 1 or 2 a year, and I feel like I really want people to read, and I want people to have the experience that I had reading them. And tomorrow is one of those. It's a story of game designers, video game designers. It's sad and it's lovely, and like about creativity. And I was talking last week about how I love things where people are geeking out about things that they love, and this is like a geeking out about things you love book. But you don't have to be a gamer to enjoy it. I'm not a video gamer, but I really liked it. And now I'm reading Lessons in Chemistry, which was a really buzzy book this summer. It took me this long to get the hold from my library because so many people have been reading it. It's about a woman who's a chemist in the 50s, and she refuses to get married, so her boyfriend is also a chemist, and they work in the same lab, but then he dies in a freak accident, and she's pregnant and doesn't know it, and then gets fired from her job for being pregnant and not married, and eventually years later ends up the host of a cooking show and she actually talks about chemistry in the cooking show, and I'm like, got like 2 more hours of that one to read, and I've been enjoying it. There's some heavy stuff in it, but it is summery-ish. And then after that, I think I have, I don't know, another book by the author of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. The Secret Life of A.J. Frisbee. It's not Frisbee. Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nome is something else entirely, right? Something that starts with an F. In any case, that's a whole that came in a couple of days ago. So when I finish lessons in chemistry, I'll get into that one. I'm watching Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey, which is on Netflix, and it's about the fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is a sect that believes in plural marriage, and Warren Jeffs was the prophet of that community for a long time, and he started marrying children, like young teens, off to often much older men, and yeah, so it's heavy and hard stuff, but I kind of have a fascination with cultists too, and you know, not all religions, not cults, but it's hard to say where that line is. But obviously, if you're like living in an insular community and breaking laws, and the people are so controlled, they're so convinced that this one person knows everything and sees everything and is God's representative on earth, and is the person who tells them who they're supposed to marry and when, and all of that stuff. That's a cult that's gone beyond the pale of what religion is supposed to be. But I have kind of a fascination with those sorts of stories, and so even when they're like really uncomfortable and hard to watch, it's intriguing to me. So that's my other genre, I guess. Geeky stuff and cults. Who knew? Anyway, we also watched that first episode of House of the Dragon, so it's called, the Game of Thrones prequel, which was alright, but whew, that childbirth scene I could not watch. And I've been reading or seeing a lot on the internet about how you have a certain expectation level for how gruesome a Game of Thrones series is going to be, and there's going to be a lot of sex, there's going to be a lot of violence, and you just know that going in. But that was like, maybe needed a trigger warning for the women in the audience, because it was really hard. And even if you have never had a traumatic birth experience, it still like gets deep into something visceral in you. And I know that that's the point, like it was supposed to be about, that the childbed is a woman's battlefield, and there's very real danger of death. But I feel like the showrunners, the writers, the producers, who are vastly men, underestimate the way in which women today feel that that's still the case. Like, we have modern medicine, we have much safer methods of dealing with breech babies and doing cesarean sections, and we're not conscious, not that conscious. We're, there's pain relief and things that clearly were not happening, and consent that clearly was not happening, right? But there's still a lot of trauma associated with births, and a lot of danger, and a lot of real, true, current day stories where women have not survived, and where babies don't survive, and that's just a lot to be grappling with it for a show that's supposed to be, I hate to use the word fun, because it does have all that violence and is serious and all of that too, but it's supposed to be entertaining, and that does not feel entertaining. It feels gruesome and heart-wrenching, and I almost say inappropriate, but it's not, because I get that it's accurate for the time, but it's a lot to watch. So if you haven't watched it yet, just be warned that that's coming, and guard your heart and look away if you need to. I think that's basically it. So I hope that you have a good crafty week ahead, and that if you do a little bit of soul searching around what you want for the rest of the year, and if there are crafty things involved in that, if there are not crafty things involved in that, whatever. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear your plans. And if there's a way that we can help, I would love to hear that too. And I hope that you have a great crafty week ahead and stay safe and cool and all of that.